With utmost respect to whom this may concern, to all, thank you for taking the time to read my letter. My name is, I am an artist. Late February, I discovered Second Lady Karen Pence's choice to support art therapy. As a sophomore at Western Washington University, working to earn a Bachelor's of Fine Arts, Bachelor's of Education, and Master's degree in art therapy, this news rendered me speechless, as if rediscovering passion, because once uncertain, I chose my path at 17, a senior in high school. October 24th, 2014, a shooting in the Marysville-Pilchuck High School cafeteria killed 5 freshmen. Students fled over barbed fences or were like me in lockdown for hours, evacuated at FBI gunpoint. Where do we turn now? My instructor asked. Curiosity Incorporated requested art for a t-shirt fundraiser, giving all proceeds to the victims' families. And to honor our choice to surpass tragedy, our self-defining brave resiliency, I donated work. Years of fighting depression and crippling social anxiety fell to courage, and I have known since that the source of my perseverant agency is in using my work to benefit communities. I understood the power of art to heal and empower, choosing to devote my life to this legacy, this mission. And so the surprising news that America's 45th Second Lady is choosing to support such a universal, empowering profession should be news creatives in society have dreamt of. And yet, I shudder. AATA members and non-members alike, with sights set on strengthening individuals and revitalizing communities, hesitate to accept government-affiliated support. Therapists bear witness to ever-present controversies always surfacing within their practices, in the creations of their clients, extending into the daily lives of all. And this needs to be addressed before it is true that any current government entity genuinely supports the profession. Scrutiny on Karen Pence and on AATA is not undue. I write to the Ethics Committee because we need to address the sources of trauma. Art therapy may gain by being legitimized and funded by a representative with an influential political platform who is even potentially qualified to serve as Secretary of Education. However, with much room for growth, less established, and therefore more to influence, art therapy can be undermined or inverted for any purpose the administration chooses. The AATA is susceptible to being hijacked by toxic influence. I watched a television show about a woman who acquired stolen diamonds, property of Holocaust victims, to fund her life-saving medical procedure. It was called blood money. Some say it should not be wasted. It goes to a good cause anyway. But if even the latter is questionable, then certainly accepting money from this particular source is less benign. It is actively malicious, directly causing current demoralization and distress, bringing people to therapy. Our actions have immediate and resounding consequences in either condoning or condemning our administration's actions. The ends do not justify the means, and vice versa. Take heed from our education system. Before states adopted the Common Core educational standards, the senator who proposed his support for public schools determined his way of measuring and enhancing student academic success was better. Basically bribing perpetually needy states with financial aid, the first to utilize the Common Core would receive the most. From there on, the government tightened influence on our public education system without substantial improvements. An exception is relative theoretical continuity. Still, teachers and students are not involved in processes they are directly affected by, leaving classroom curriculum still seized by the test. Trapped, my peers, teachers, and I knew this firsthand. Our experiences reduced to formulaic standards as passive byproducts of systems we have no voice in. Our society is educated by a system stuck in industrialized limbo, with few citizens attaining jobs from it because, like Ivanka Trump's clothesline made in China, they've been outsourced anyway. Is it a mistake this misaligns with prominent Republican values? Given our administration's empty promises to enhance our economy, its active role in dividing the country, and intent to disenfranchise millions of voices by removing accessible education, I expect a similar outcome for art therapy. If potential for entities to switch morals and platforms is questionable, I would ask consideration for how Republican and Democratic parties switch platforms. But of course, I and many of my peers learned and heard nothing of this in public school. I wondered why. Events like the Japanese internment and compulsory boarding schools for Hispanic and First Nations people after mass genocide seemed only worth a few words. And the American eugenics movement and its inspiring influence on Hitler and the Holocaust was worth none at all. It is noteworthy how public education, a public service, easily becomes a tool in censoring, misinforming, and manipulating society. Corruption is designed to spread. If we endorse Mrs. Pence, thus the administration she represents, without unquestionable evidence doing so would not perpetuate aggressions against the people they are supposed to serve, then we have failed to hold ourselves accountable. Why approach this casually when we stand between corruption and care? A doctor must abide by the Hippocratic Oath, taken before becoming a public servant. Who saves all life? Who is either with all people or against them? Who either condones or condemns wrongdoings? There are no second conditions. It must be blind. It must be consistent. I assert that in order to truly practice art therapy at its ethical core, the AATA must demand Karen Pence demonstrates her upholding of the philosophy and principles of the field. We must ensure that she recognizes and obviously loudly opposes the administration's contributions to our national traumas, including decisions to defund, dismantle, and remove the NEA, PBS, the public education system, Planned Parenthood, and to build a border wall, create bans on people of different religions and backgrounds, continue to use divisive, inciting, stigmatizing rhetoric to dehumanize, isolate, stratify minorities, ultimately to systematically marginalize populations, and to fund or popularize war efforts and elevate dominant powers. Of course, these are but a few sources contributing to the very collective traumas of our society addressed in every therapist's practice. The AATA must reiterate separation of church and state. This means considering Mrs. Pence's relationship with the LGBTQ community, as he believes that gay people can be cured through conversion therapy. It is scientifically impossible and, most importantly, inhumane. He continuously seeks to make homosexual marriage and relationships illegal because it does not align with his religious doctrine. As I understand it, Mrs. Pence has been highly influential on Mr. Pence's conversion from Catholicism to evangelical Christian. I cannot ignore its inherent contradictions with her alleged passion for art therapy. She need not agree with the life choice. She needs only to save lives when possible, like a doctor. And should it stand like the AATA? I imagine an art therapy office conveniently providing conversion services. Psychologists and animal rights activists question past and current experimental research methods, calling them barbaric, inhuman, archaic. After World War II, when the Nazis committed mass genocide and performed deplorable, mutilating, undignifying experiments on its persecuted minorities, world leaders gathered to ensure such inhumanity would never occur again. So became the Nuremberg Code of 1947, and later, in 1964, the Declaration of Helsinki and the Belmont Report, 1979. Founded on the premise of doing no harm, these ethical codes have three basic overarching principles: respect of persons through uncoerced choice, autonomy, beneficence to the participant, and justness. Is purpose of treatment to serve a social construct? Is conversion therapy really debatable in Mr. Pence's eyes? Most importantly, is it debatable in ours? We must not allow our administration to warp the philosophy of therapy to suit their agendas. Neutrality is silence. Silence is approval. We must not support any entity that seeks to in any way create a business out of suffering. If a for-profit entity uses the AATA to serve dominant groups, or all they seek to oppress, then what is it really? A hammer on the nail? What are the implications of using rhetoric that allows division and instability to create and feed a machine that perpetuates oppression, eliciting suffering, which prompts use of a program the administration so uncharacteristically supports? We need to address the root cancerous tumor rather than ignore it, feed it to quiet it, forget it, and then profit from it when it shows. The goal of therapy and other forms of education is to help people use their individual voices to be independent and adaptable rather than reliant, to self-define. Can people really be independent without having autonomy over their own lives? Can people have true autonomy of their lives when they lack chances to speak and to be heard? Who has the power to speak, and what do they say about or for those who cannot? As I hear contemporary therapists and educators say, the root problem is not a person or pupil, but systems they adapt to, built to exploit, not serve. Therapy and education is not indoctrination of a server's personal ethics. It fosters opportunities, empowering people to take control of their lives according to their beliefs by identifying problems, gaining confidence, finding solutions, being aware, responsible, accountable, and to potentially, should they choose, change the systems which made them vulnerable. It is to foster agency. People question if an administration seeking to gain control, shutting down questions, disagreements, and delegitimizing perspectives truly wants to relinquish power to those it works against. We doubt it. We need Karen Pence to acknowledge our therapy is not only intended for those in private sectors who can afford private practice, but that it is used by those who experience all forms of injustices with all different backgrounds and perspectives. It is an all-inclusive service. We need her to address the public's concerns and disagreements diplomatically, rather than delegitimizing them like Trump does so often when interacting with the media, as when he recently barred numerous media outlets from attending a conference. Blind, she must willingly serve and accommodate all as necessary. Compromise and collaboration should ensue. Otherwise, it is yet another politically, fiscally motivated deal, a disingenuous interaction with the people. We need to know Karen Pence is not a profiteer, that the AATA will not abandon its members and those it serves in order to garner quick, convenient support. Because patients' lives are not conquered battlegrounds or diamonds, spoils of ethical and political wars. As a student, future therapist, and educator, I urge the AATA to demand Pence disavow any policies and activities jeopardizing the well-being of all individuals within our collective nation. Demand she states personal beliefs of art therapy in accordance to AATA ethical standards, and that she composes a publicly shown statement of intent proving advocacy for all, including marginalized communities. Thank you for your time. Again, I urge this be done for all the people the AATA serves. We set the standards. We choose our legacy. Will we produce servants of the system, or will we empower survivors?